Well, the sun is finally shining on England again, both literally and metaphorically. And why metaphorically? Well, because Rupert Lowe has announced the launch of a national political party, Restore Britain. Finally, we have a chance to get out of this quagmire. And there's one man who's going to be especially happy to hear this news.
Who would you like to see being PM?
PM?
Yeah, Prime Minister.
Rupert Lowe.
I don't even know who that guy is. It's just a random patriot that Novara Media happened to ask whilst they were walking around Manchester, but he's got to be pretty happy about the news, right? And it's funny because 2 days ago I made a video about Jim Ratcliffe, and the last 6 minutes of that video were just me ranting about how we need Rupert Lowe to start a party and we need him to do it soon. Well, fast forward a couple of days and here we are. Now, this announcement came alongside a video, so I thought what we'd do today is go through, watch the video together, section by section, and I'll give you my thoughts on it as we go through it. And at the end of the video, I'll give you even more of my thoughts. So let's do it.
I have chosen to speak to you today from the farm because places like this represent what proper Britain is about. Hard work, responsibility, effort, duty, stewardship. This is the England I know, and this is the England that I love. On a farm, you don't think in election cycles or headlines or polling. You think in seasons. You think in generations, in what you leave behind to those who come after you.
That is a very good introduction, and I'll tell you why. Rupert has immediately pinpointed and highlighted what has been going wrong with politics in this country for a while now. Short-termerism, short-term thinking. Politicians stopped thinking about the long-term health of this nation and they just started thinking about the next year or 2 years, the next budget, the next election cycle, whatever it might happen to be. And that is why we're in this mess. To give you a good example, Boris Johnson won that huge landslide majority, but then he was told, oh, there might be a recession in Great Britain, but you could stave it off by bringing millions and millions of immigrants into the country. So that's what he did. He did that, the Boris wave. Now, the long-term consequences of that are absolutely devastating for the country, economically, but also culturally and demographically. But he did it because he was only thinking about the short term. He was thinking about his own reputation. He didn't want recession on his Wikipedia page in the future. So Rupert, starting with this, the abolition of this short-term thinking and the restoration of bringing this country back to what it once was, perfect. I love it.
And that's why, here on the farm, I am now launching Restore Britain as a national political party. I'm now going to dedicate my life to finding, organising, funding and providing hundreds of qualified candidates to present to the British people at the next general election. This process has already started, with invitations being issued to patriots in aligned political parties, Reform, the Conservatives, the SDP, Advance, and more. In local politics, we will work in partnership with localised political parties, such as Great Yarmouth First, that have the best interests of their residents at heart, combining our forces at the next general election. The men and women standing for Restore in that election will not be politicians. I promise you that. They will not be failed ministers. They will not be tainted by failures of the past. They will be from business, from the military, from science, from medicine, from education, from industry, representing real communities up and down the country. Every single one will be from well outside the existing political establishment, and every single one will understand the difficult decisions that need to be taken.
There are two interesting things that we can talk about here. First of all, Rupert says that he's already begun the search for MP candidates. And yes, he's gone to other parties. Now, what he's not talking about here is trying to turn Restore into Tory 2.0 or anything like that, as we've seen already. What he's really talking about is going to smaller parties like the SDP and Advance UK, and yes, probably Reform as well for some of their councillors who've become disillusioned at the direction that Nigel Farage is taking, and saying, look, I've been watching you for a while, you're great, you're a great fit for Restore, would you like to join us? That's what he's talking about, not career politicians, not failed cabinet ministers or anything like that. He does also say the Tories, and I suspect who he's targeting specifically there is Katie Lamb. Katie Lamb only won her seat in 2024. So she wasn't in the Conservative Party when they were in government. She doesn't have that stain behind her, and quite frankly, she is a fantastic MP, and I think she would be a great fit for Restore Britain. Let's see what happens there. Now, almost in complete contradiction, he then says these people won't be politicians when he's talking about the candidates. And sure, people like Katie Lamb are politicians. Rupert Lowe at this point arguably himself is a politician. But what he means is they won't be career politicians. They won't be people who graduated from Oxford or Cambridge, as I did, when they were 21, and then just entered politics and they've been there for the last 20 years. You know, we're talking about people who've had a life doing something else. And that's really, really fundamental. I think we're all sick of career politicians at this point. Rupert has correctly identified that there is a massive talent pool in this country, whether it's veterans, whether it's police officers or, well, retired police officers, of course, as well as that, businessmen. He talks about people from the sciences. Yeah, fantastic. We could do with a bit more of that in government, right? Farmers. Rupert himself, he's not really a politician. Yes, he is now. You know, he's been an MP for the last year and a half, but, you know, he's a businessman and he's a farmer by trade. That's what he is. So he's correctly identified, look, people are sick of seeing the same old washed up, tired career politicians. Britain needs change. And if we're going to have change, it's not going to be from the same type of people. Good for him. Completely support this.
Because there are no easy fixes. I'm not going to tell you comforting lies about the condition of our country. I have only ever been honest with the British people, and I will be straight with you now. What is necessary will be incredibly painful. But for the first time in a very long time, voters will have a genuine alternative which is truthful with them about the scale of what now has to be done. The first priority is to control who comes to our country, and more importantly, who stays in our country. Restore Britain will not just stop mass immigration, we will reverse it. Every single illegal migrant will be securely detained and then deported. The message will be unrelenting. If you are in this country without our permission, you will be removed. For the foreseeable future, far more people must leave Britain than arrive. If a foreign national is unable to speak English, lives in social housing, claims benefits, refuses to work, fails to integrate, commits crime, or even actively hates our way of life and wishes to do us harm, then they must leave or be made to leave. Restore Britain will make our communities safe again for women and children. That I promise you. If that means millions go, then millions go.
If that means millions go, then millions go. Beautiful. Music to my ears. That is exactly what I want to hear, because that is what it's going to take. And Rupert quite rightly points out that this is not going to be easy. We know it's not going to be easy because if the problems of this country were easy to fix, other political parties would have done it by now. We know it's not going to be easy, but we just want someone who's willing to stand up and say, this is going to be hard, this is going to be painful, we need to do it for the future of this nation. That is what we need, that is what people want. And finally, we have someone talking about legal migration. Everyone focuses on illegal migration, on the small boats. And yes, per person, that is more problematic because we have no idea who these guys are. They throw their passports away. Very, very dangerous situation. And of course, that needs to be stopped. They need to be detained and they need to be deported. Rupert has promised that, and I believe absolutely he will deliver on that promise. But finally, we have someone talking about legal immigration, because the small boats, that's about 3 or 4% of migration into this country. It's actually really small. It's not, it's a lot of people, but it's really small compared to the number of legal migrants. We've got a lot of legal migrants in this country who are just claiming benefits. They're not even working, okay? You bring one person in on a work visa, and then they bring their wife and 8 children. That doesn't benefit the country economically. That is absolutely absurd. It's why the country is going broke. 73% of Somalis in Britain live in social housing. That's insane. We are subsidizing these people to be here, but why? Can anyone tell me why we would do that? That is not the actions of a nation that loves itself or respects itself. So yes, something needs to be done about this. Absolutely. If that means millions go, then millions go. I'm just glad to hear that someone is willing to step up to the plate and do something about this. Finally talk about this issue very honestly. I don't want net zero immigration. I don't want one in, one out. No, I want net negative immigration, or emigration, I suppose. I want remigration. That is what people want. They look around at their towns and their cities, they barely recognize it anymore. And that is not just because of small boat people, okay? That's because of legal immigration. That's because of failed previous parties' political policies. We need to fix that. We need to change that. Let me give you an example, right? Just to illustrate my point, and then I'll shut up. It's like when these parties say, oh, we need to lower immigration, and they don't even talk about the prospect of getting some of these people out of the country, it's like you get shot and you go to the doctors and you say, hey doc, I've been shot. Can you, patch me up? We need to fix this, right? We need to undo the damage that has been done to me. And you get there and the doctor says, I can't fix that for you. All I can do is lower the rate at which you get shot in the future. Well, that's absurd, right? The problem already exists. We need to fix the problem. We don't need to just not create more problems in the future. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Obviously, Rupert gets a thumbs up from me on this one.
We're constantly told that the economy needs vast swathes of low-skilled migrants. We know that's simply not true. What we need is to get millions of healthy Brits back into work. A radical overhaul of how welfare is delivered. Protecting those in genuine need, but not funding healthy shirkers to live off the back of hard-working men and women. If you can work, you must work. It really is that simple. Restore Britain will be abundantly clear. If you consistently refuse work, then you will lose your benefits. We will punish indolence, and more importantly, we will reward success. We will provide vast economic incentives for men and women to start businesses, generate opportunities, build wealth, and create self-sufficient families. Standing here today on the farm, I know exactly what it means to deal with energy bills, labour shortages, regulation, unproductive paperwork, planning restrictions, tax, and endless uncertainty. The state has definitively become the enemy of the people. Restore Britain will burn away suffocating taxes on work and enterprise. We will slash unnecessary regulation. We will dismantle bloated quangos and the overbearing HR culture. We must crush parasitic Britain. We will restore long-term, stable, logical policy so that businesses can plan and invest and grow again.
One really important point that Rupert said in that clip is that the British state has become the enemy of the people. And that's something I've said probably 100 times on X and many times on this channel because I really do believe it. Whatever the British state decides that it wants to do is what it's going to do. Whether that's what the people want or not, completely irrelevant. And I think some people in the British state still see themselves as some part of an empire, which is very, very strange. And they see it as their duty to colonize England with people from the old empire, India, Pakistan and Africa, right? Completely absurd. But it's not just immigration, of course. Things like net zero or frustrating Brexit rather than trying to make it actually work. I mean, we've heard from people like Dominic Cummings and Liz Truss who've come out of senior positions in the government. Well, Liz Truss was the Prime Minister, briefly, and said, look, everything I tried to do, I was just met with resistance. Rupert's the kind of guy who knows that. He's spotted that and he's not going to put up with it. Whatever laws have to be passed in Parliament, allowing him to fire senior civil servants, I think that will be done. And the message will be very clear. Get on board, do what you're told, or go and find a new job in the private sector. It's really that simple. I mean, just this morning, apparently civil servants have been briefing out publicly, but, not really publicly, it's leaked, that they can't possibly do any kind of mass deportations. The Home Office just isn't fit to do it. Right? Okay, look, you need someone who's going to go in there and basically tell these people, these senior civil servants, well, you've got 2 months to turn this around and make sure that we can do it, or you're fired. You're unemployed. That's it. Game over. That's what we need. Someone with a bit of strength, a bit of determination, who's going to look at these people who've been holding the country to ransom and say, no more. No more. You don't run the country.
But Restore Britain is about much more than numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about who we are as a nation and who we are as a people. Britain is not just an economy. Britain is not just an idea. Britain is not just a passport. Britain is a nation. Britain is a people, our people, and Restore Britain will never allow that to be erased. We will celebrate our Christian heritage and the identity that built and shaped this country. Responsibility, restraint, forgiveness, duty, and fairness. In short, a high-trust society. That will mean defending our culture. That will mean resisting the relentless creep of radical Islam. That will mean banning the burqa, outlawing Sharia law, blocking cousin marriages, and reimposing our Christian-based rule of law. A Restore Britain government would legislate to ensure that no halal or kosher slaughter on British soil. This is Britain, and we will do things our way. This political party now exists for one reason: to restore Britain, to make it a better, safer, and more prosperous place for British men and women to raise their families. It will be difficult and it will be painful, but I assure you, it is possible. I hope you will consider joining me on this journey and becoming a member of our party. It is our country, it is now our collective responsibility to act. Together, we will restore Britain. Thank you.
At the end there, Rupert says he hopes you will join Restore Britain. Well, I already have. Admittedly, by accident, because I joined Restore when it wasn't a political party, it was just a political action group. Now that it's converted over, my membership has as well, and it might be the same for many of you. So the first time I've ever been in a political party, and it was an accident. But hey, there we go, fine. Look, the reception to this has actually been quite good. A lot of people have come out and endorsed it straight away. Quite big figures as well. You know, Katie Hopkins has millions of people on social media, so that's pretty significant, right? Elon Musk is the most followed person in the world and also the world's richest man, and he's come out and said that Rupert Lowe is the only guy who can get this done. That's a pretty huge endorsement. Who else have we got? Duncan Bannatyne from Dragon's Den, of course. Ben Habib has come out, which is very, very interesting, and I think I'll talk about that in a future video. But yeah, that's fascinating. He's come out and said that this is excellent news. One person I haven't heard from yet is Jeremy Clarkson. Now, why do I say that? It seems a bit random, right? But Jeremy Clarkson wrote an article a couple of weeks ago about how nothing will change, even if the Reform Party win. Nigel Farage isn't going to make any changes. These are Jeremy Clarkson's words, not mine. And it was a bit of a dismal article. It was a bit depressing. And he just said, you know, it's going to be the same old, just a continuation. Well, Rupert Lowe is offering something different. And Rupert Lowe is also a farmer, much like Jeremy Clarkson. So is that going to be enough to sway Jeremy to, you know, throw his hat in the ring and endorse Rupert and support Restore Britain? Maybe. One person who is definitely not about to endorse Restore Britain is Alex Phillips, who is a long-time Nigel Farage ally, and she actually had to read the news out that Rupert Lowe had started Restore Britain on Talk TV, and she's clearly not very happy about this.
The big news is that Rupert Lowe, the former Reform Party MP, I'll read it. I have thought long and hard about what I am about to say to you, and I've come to a stark conclusion. There is simply no other way. This is the only choice. I was elected to Parliament in 2024. The good people of Great Yarmouth elected me. Not for 1 second in Westminster have I forgotten that.
Phillips is clearly not a very happy woman, is she? And honestly, I don't blame her. A lot of people have hitched their wagon firmly to Nigel Farage, and they're going to be devastated by this news. But for me, Farage was never going to deliver the kind of change that this country needs. And let me just give you an example to illustrate this. When Rupert was still in the Reform Party, it was being circulated in the newspapers, presumably leaked by Nigel Farage's team, that he was constantly battling Rupert to stop saying mass deportations. Stop saying that on TV, stop saying that in speeches. But Rupert wouldn't stop saying it, and eventually he got kicked out of the party. At the same time, Nigel Farage was doing interviews like the one with Stephen Edgington, where he said, and I quote verbatim, "Mass deportations are a political impossibility. We simply can't do it." He later said we mustn't alienate the Muslim vote. Now, hearing those things and then comparing it to what Rupert has just said about banning halal, banning kosher, banning the burqa, who do you think is serious? Who do you think has the courage of their convictions to go forwards and deliver the change that this country needs? Because it's not Nigel Farage, okay? There was an example, by the way, where Sarah Pochin actually suggested maybe we should ban the burqa. And what happened? Well, she got her head chewed off by the Reform Party senior establishment. Zia Yusuf, a Muslim man, was quite offended by that, and he actually stepped down before rejoining a couple of days later. Had Nadeem Zahawi been in the party at that time, maybe he would have been unhappy. Who knows? Look, the point is just this. I compare these two people and what they've said and what they've actually put out there and their consistency and their courage. And it's very, very clear to me that Rupert is the guy. He's the guy, like I said, with the courage of his convictions. And look, Nigel Farage is funny. He's charismatic. But you know who else had those qualities? Boris Johnson. And we made Boris Johnson the Prime Minister, and it was a fucking disaster. I'll finish by making two additional points as I trudge through this marsh. The party needs to get on a war footing. And in order to do that, they need both people and policy. So what they should be doing now, which I suspect they are anyway, is capitalising on the momentum they have, having discussions with Advance UK, bringing those guys over, because Advance was built with the intention of Rupert Lowe leading the party anyway. And the people in Advance are good people. Well, I don't know them all individually, but they're good people who were just dissatisfied with the direction that Reform had been taking. So pretty good natural fit. As well as that, go to those other political parties and take the absolute very best of them that are politically aligned with Restore Britain. So you start off with a good core of people. At the same time, immediately begin that search for businessmen, veterans, scientists, people who are not politicians but bring a wealth of experience, who are patriotic, and honestly, you kind of want people who've never really been willing to throw their hat in the ring in the past. They are patriotic, they see that the country is going in the wrong direction, but they never really wanted to be a politician. That's kind of the perfect person. Plato actually sort of discusses this a little bit. You almost want people who don't want to be leaders, which is very, very strange, right? Anyway, let's not get distracted by ancient Greek philosophy. The other thing is policy. Now, you do have a little bit more time, I think, to work on policy, but Reform haven't really put any policy out at this point, and they've been going for years now. I think they had some kind of like 4-page policy document, which is not great. Restore have Harrison Pitt writing their mass deportations policy, and that was 110 pages. But I think what really needs to happen is that Harrison Pitt should have a team of people working under him. And in order to do that, the party is going to need funding, which is a very interesting question. I mean, I would like a political party to be entirely funded just by its members. And perhaps that can actually happen, because I think there are a lot of people screaming out for this, crying out for something like Restore. But at the same time, there are clearly some very wealthy, very dissatisfied people in the world who might be willing to donate some money to Restore Britain. Duncan Bannatyne is a very wealthy man, and he seems to like the cut of Rupert's jib. I think he's worth like £300 million. How much would it hurt him to, I don't know, give 200 grand to Restore Britain? Probably not very much. Jim Ratcliffe is worth £20 billion, and he came out the other day and said he doesn't think that even Farage has what it takes to turn the country around. Well, maybe he's willing to throw his weight behind Restore Britain. Maybe he likes the cut of Rupert Lowe's jib as well. Who knows, right? And then, of course, you've got the big one, which is Elon Musk, who can throw almost infinite money at anything and not feel it for a variety of reasons. First of all, he's the world's richest man. And second of all, he doesn't actually live like the world's richest man, and he's not particularly bothered about having the world's biggest super yacht or anything like that. He just kind of lives a quite humble life whilst building space rockets and stuff. Perfect level of autism. Anyway, That, I think, is what the party needs to focus on at the moment. People and policy. They don't need me to tell them this. I absolutely guarantee they're already cracking on with it. I'm just telling you that that is probably what the party is going to be doing right now. The second point that I wanted to make is about compromise. A lot of people are going to have to compromise to some extent and just get behind Rupert so that we can at least achieve something. Let me give you an example. Steve Laws has come out and said, you know what, I support Rupert Lowe, even though he's not anywhere close to my position on remigration. Steve Laws, for those who aren't aware, wants total remigration. It is probably the most right-wing, hardline view you can have on immigration. He thinks that everyone who is not English, Scottish, Welsh or Northern Irish should go back to their ancestral homelands, even if they're second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation, right? Pretty tough position. That's not the position that Rupert is going to take, and Steve knows that. And yet Steve is willing to compromise and say, yes, we should get behind Rupert because we're talking about getting at least a few million people out of this country, and that's what we need to do, right? For me, Rupert's a big supporter of the death penalty. I'm not. I've made a video about this in the past. It's not because I don't think people deserve it. I do think that, you know, someone like Axel Rudikabana, for example, absolutely does deserve it. But I don't trust the state with that level of power because the state just misuses its power all the time. We've seen that with terrorism legislation. So I'm going to have to compromise on that, you know, to an extent. It doesn't mean I can't keep espousing my view, my opposition to the death penalty. It just means that I have to accept by getting behind Rupert, I'm not going to get everything that I want. Okay, so be it. That is absolutely fine. I would say with something like the death penalty, you'd expect that it would go to a referendum anyway, because it's such a significant matter. And I think that Rupert would put that decision in the hands of the people rather than just unilaterally bringing it back. Who knows? But look, yes, people are going to have to make some element of compromise. Fine. This is what we need to do. This is the best shot that we have of turning the country around. So let's not squander it because this political party doesn't believe everything I believe exactly as I believe it. We have an opportunity here. Let's make the most of it. Look, I already know that this video is going to be really long, so if you've made it to this point, I'm very, very grateful. Perhaps you're feeling a sense of enthusiasm like I am. Perhaps you've got the pep back in your step as well. I think this is fantastic news. And like I said, I will make a video in the future comparing and contrasting Reform and Restore, Farage and Rupert, so that people can make up their own minds. It won't be biased, okay? It'll just be so that people can make an informed decision about who they want to support, who they think is the right person to lead the change in this country. And if people have specific questions that, you know, I can answer, that we can talk about, I'll do that. Put them in the comments below. And yeah, look, like I said, the sun is shining on England once more. The ground is drying. The marsh is dissipating. It feels like England is rising, and I think we're back. I think we're back. Till the next one.